without further ado, I would like to introduce the co-chairs of the Men of Mystery Committee, Jan Wilcox and Cindy Woods.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Elizabeth. And also thank you everyone out there joining us for this second Collecting Clues event. It's very exciting. You know, we were talking about the benefits of having it virtual, so many people all over the United States can join us. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Rachel Howzell Hall. Rachel is, there she is. Rachel is a prolific writer. She is she's well respected by her peers in the writing industry. She is also known for her impeccable research and due diligence. And let's see, what else did I jot down for you? If you're looking for a captivating, well-written book, series of books, you'll be very thrilled to meet Rachel and begin to be one of her outstanding, enthusiastic purchasers. So I met Rachel when she first spoke to our Women in Words group in West LA at a luncheon in 2014. And she brought to us her first book, which was Land of Shadows. And that was in her series of Detective Eloise Norton. And that was followed by 3 other books: Skies of Ash, Trail of Echoes, City of Saviors. Then her next book was a standalone, They All Fall Down. And the one that will be discussed today is And Then She's Gone, where she's introducing her brand new private investigator, Gray Sykes, which is a great name. And Grayson's going to be, she's going to be starting a new series with her, which is really exciting. And she's going to be searching for the missing Isabel Lincoln. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Rachel. And yeah, she is. And now also to pass you over to the co-chair, wonderful co-chair Cindy Woods, and she's going to introduce Neal. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. Today I have the honor of introducing Neal Griffith, one of our Men of Mystery. He served in the Marine Corps and had over 25 years of service in law enforcement. And during that time, he worked as a patrol cop, a field training officer, a member of SWAT, a hostage negotiator, narcotics investigator, gang enforcement specialist, and supervisor of a homicide unit. He was named Officer of the Year twice and retired as a senior lieutenant. He holds a bachelor's degree from Cal State University San Marcos and is a graduate of the prestigious FBI National Academy in Quantico. And he studied police ethics and forensic science. His 4 books out: Benefit of the Doubt, A Voice from the Field, From His Own Hand, and the latest, The Burden of Truth. They're great reads. We encourage you to order them if you don't already have them. And now to introduce, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Neal Griffin. Take it away, Neal.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Jan. Hello, everyone. Wow, I'm looking down, I see 35 participants, and that just really does my heart great.
Yeah.
It does me good. The idea that there's people tuning in tonight that, you know, we're in this situation where we're all kind of cut off from one another, and we've got to figure out a way to kind of stay in touch and to reach out. And I just have to give a lot of credit to Cindy and Jan and Men of Mystery and everyone at Creating Conversations to make this possible. So this is great. And I really look forward to talking to my writing colleague, because Rachel and I, we go way back with Forge. We've both been with Forge now for, I think we debuted together, right? In 2015?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
When we met at Curious Galaxy so long ago. You were just about to come out too. So
this is great, Rachel. So it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
One of these days we'll all be back in the same room. But listen, I have to tell you that I was really impressed that you stepped away from Eloise. You're out into a new area now, and you've created this great new character, Gray Sykes.
I love Grace. Mhm.
Well, I'm going to tell you, that's where I want to start tonight with because I think, well, you and I mean, when it comes to protagonists, when it
Yeah.
comes to the driving force behind a story, that a lot goes into that effort. So you created this really cool character, Gray Sykes, and not surprising to me, a woman who's very strong. And in this case, she has a lot in common, I think, with Eloise. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
But she's a PI, so she's not a
Mhm.
cop. So you've moved away from the LAPD.
Right.
And she's working her first big case as a private investigator. Well, big case. She's working a missing person that is reported by a boyfriend who really just wants his dog back.
He wants
But
to
as
go.
is often the case in these sorts of mysteries and thrillers, it's more than it seems. So I don't want to do any spoilers, so I'll just turn it over to you. What do you want to tell us about Grayson, and what do you want to tell us about this great new story you've written?
Right. So first, thank you everybody for spending your part of your Saturday. No, it's not Saturday. It's Friday. Your Friday night
yeah.
with Neal and I. Thank
Yeah.
you for coming and listening to us talk about books and PIs and
Yeah.
procedural and all the rest of it. Thank you. Gray is a new private investigator, meaning she is just starting out. She had her first case already, and it was just to look for a Chihuahua named Cheeto. But now she's moved on to people, and people, as we know, are always complicated and scary and stupid and filled with secrets. And so Gray, who is bursting with her own secrets, is now looking for Isabel Lincoln. I wanted to create a PI who is unlike Lou in some ways. Lou Norton is very professional, and she's not necessarily slick, but she's knowledgeable. She's world weary. She is wise. She thinks far ahead and is more of a chess player. Whereas Gray is trying to get to know herself as she's trying to figure out other people. So you have this riddle and mystery of a woman trying to solve a riddle and a mystery of another woman. And she's not polished, she is like most of us. When we go into new spaces, we're nervous. And how many people have spilled coffee on themselves before our very big interview? How many people have forgotten to bring a pen, or didn't charge their phone, or thinking about the kids? You're not at your top, you're insecure, you go in unbalanced somewhere. And Gray is unbalanced, primarily because she's new at this, but also because she knows this world of women who run from bad things. She knows that world very much, but something about this case takes her from knowing something very well into kind of questioning all of it. And so she's questioning Isabel. She's questioning Ian O'Donnell, who is the boyfriend, the client. She's questioning herself. So she's constantly unbalanced. And I love that, because that's all of us, especially in these times where we have the most professional people who don't know how to mute themselves on Zoom after 6 months of, meeting. So yeah, I think she reflects us more than my cop character, than most cop characters.
Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, Rachel, I love the way you described her, because I think well, obviously you know her better than anyone, but I think that what I've read about her, I think you just really summed up the kind of frenzy that she lives with her life. But now, correct me, I don't think this is a big piece of work you did. I mean, this is 500 pages of twists and turns, and in fact, it's funny. The most thing I'm reading about in some of the reviews is just the level of the twists and the turns that just keep coming. So, but Eloise never appeared in this book, right?
No.
And I kept waiting. I thought maybe you'd introduce those two characters. So how do you, if you did, how do you think they get along?
I think Gray would be, I see them as cousins in some way. I think she'd be amused by Gray. I think her heart would hurt for Gray. I think she would try and help Gray as much as she can, because oh yeah. I think they would have drinks together and talk about Ian O'Donnell, the client, and swap stories about, woke white boys that they've both dated in their lives, and just the kind of microaggressions they deal with. I think they'd be very, very close, but I know Lou would. Yeah, I think so too. I think though Lou would be frustrated with, in some ways, with Grayson, at least the early days of Grayson's life,
Yeah.
because I mean, we all have those people where we want them. They're so smart and they're so wonderful, but they have this blind spot. And Lou has that blind spot too when it comes to men.
And
And
she does,
she
yeah.
want her to kind of, like, as Cher says, to snap out of it, you know? And I think together they try and snap out of it together in some ways. Yeah.
Well, I think they should meet. And yeah, I think that would be really intriguing. One thing that I really liked about your book, because it's something I'm working on right now, is with the idea of a non-linear presentation. You did this floating timeline thing, which I think, well, I'm going to ask what you thought, how that adds to the story, but you did, it is non-linear. It's a floating timeline where the significant timeline involves Gray, but then you're going back in her life and kind of bringing that out a little bit at a time. Why did you decide? That's a challenge to do that.
Right.
And how do you think that makes the story more powerful?
Well, I think, who was it that said, I can't remember his name. Oh, it was, oh, hell. I don't know it. Past is prologue, right? And I truly believe that everything we did back then reflects on everything we do now. And sometimes we make those same mistakes, or we've gotten over those bad things we did, but they still bubble up in our future and in our present. And I wanted to show how that past can come back, especially when it comes to domestic abuse, because with domestic abuse especially, and you've seen this as a cop, where a woman thinks she's over something and we're okay now, and it's okay for like 3 weeks until it's not okay.
Yeah.
There's all this history that says it's not going to be okay, but the present says he's being sweet to me. He loves me. We have kids. I have to stay. And so there's this past and present and future, and it's exhausting for
I'll just tell you that, because I know that I don't want to say it's a risk, but it's a challenge to do that. And again, I'm working with something similar right now, but I just really enjoyed that part of it where you had two converging timelines. And I just thought that was really, you handled it very well. It's a challenge, and you pulled it off.
It worked because I treated them as two separate stories. I actually wrote them separately.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then working, I initially had where I wanted to place it, but working with my editor, Kristen Sevick, she's like, okay, let's move this up here. Let's move that back there. And so we treated it like, a separate story, and then integrated that back story into the present.
Forge editors are great, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
They are.
And publishers, hi, Alexis.
I tell you, I don't know, this whole thing I hear from other writers is nobody edits anymore. And I say, you haven't met my editor.
Yeah, no, I don't get to say that. And, being, I write for my day job too. And so I am very used to this kind of communal experience of everybody having an opinion, and those jerks who kind of just say, oh, let's do this one little fix here. People who have to say something to say something.
Right.
And so I'm used to being edited by a large group of people, and I'm never offended, really.
No, I love it. Yeah,
I love it. I want this story to be the best that it can.
Yeah.
And so,
oh boy,
that's one thing with the people that I tend to work with, that I trust them to tell me the truth. Because I know they want to have this project succeed as much as I do. And so we go into this kind of place of trust to say,
well, you're not the first Forge author who has said that to me. Forge writers all comment on the intensity of the editorial process.
Yeah.
And which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to have your editor really hold you accountable. And I'm glad to hear that you go through the same thing I do. So that's awesome. Listen, I got to tell you though, so you took on a serious topic. You took on the issue, and again, I don't think this is a spoiler. You took on the issue of abusive relationships, domestic violence, and really, you took on the issue of women who are reluctant to get out of abusive relationships. Yeah. So have you gotten any feedback on that, or did you really do any kind of research on that issue?
Yeah, I did a lot of research, both personally, like looking around at my own world, you know, growing up with a vast of a lot of women from school to family to church, like this problem is not just in one little piece of the community, it's widespread. So I was also, you know, that kid who grew up with diaries, and I recorded everything. I recorded interactions between, you know, my parents and my best friend's parents and my teacher, who happened to also be teaching at the same school as her husband. I like looking at relationships and how people say things to each other. And, you know, so there was always that, just me being a nosy kid and looking at how adults talk to each other. But then as I got older and, you know, teenage girls, and how some of us liked bad boys and some of us didn't. I was one, I never liked the bad boys. And just how these young men treated my friends. You know, I have a family member, a distant family member, who was actually stabbed by her fiance and left for dead. He thought she was dead. And he left and she called 911. So I'm hearing all these stories and I'm looking at the news, and especially now with the pandemic, it's increasing. People are stuck together and words happen and fists happen, and it's a scary, scary thing. And it's a forever topic. So
well, from my perspective, in my years of responding to domestic violence, it is so often the case. It really is. It's a terribly sad scenario where women feel that, and particularly women, and really and always women
with kids.
Yeah, and they feel like they're in a position where this is just something I have to put up with.
Yeah.
And I want to tell them it's not, but that's my perspective.
Yeah.
And their perspective is completely different. So I thought you handled that really well. I just, you know, it's a serious issue, and I hope that it gives you an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about the issue of domestic violence.
It resonates with, even if it's not domestic abuse, especially women with kids. We do things for our kids that we wouldn't do. We put up with a lot of things that we, you know, wouldn't if we didn't have them, just for the sake of love. A lot of us look for love and will accept whatever is given to us, even if that means getting backhanded a lot. And it's a sad thing. And so yes, it's a mystery, and it's a thriller and suspense. But someone asked me a while ago, are my novels political? And it's like, yes, every story that I tell, I have a point. There's no fluff for me. There's great intent with every character, with every scenario.
Well, it's funny. I just did a
Your book is like that.
Well, I just did talk with that. I think we all want to challenge people's assumptions, right, as writers, and I think there's some social commentary here about the issue of very strong women who are caught in situations as they feel trapped. Yeah. And why is it that they don't just walk away? And so anyway, I thought you handled it really well, Rachel, and I think that's well. I got to tell you, I'm assuming we're going to see more of Gray Sykes.
I don't know.
What are you working on now?
I'm working on, my next book is called These Toxic Things, and it's the story.
These Toxic Things. Wow, I like that.
And it's about a young, I call her a digital archaeologist. She's a glorified scrapbooker who works for this tech company that creates these boxes. They're like Alexa devices, and they're called memory banks. And so you upload your memories and pictures of special trinkets that you love into this bank. And my character, Mickey, she writes narratives about these little memento things, about, where you found them, when you found them, why are they so important to you? And so she's working with a client, Nadia, who owns a curiosity shop, and working on these items. And Nadia, the shop owner, is found dead the next day. And so Gray is trying to figure out, how did Nadia die? What's the significance of these items? And then, of course, because it's me, I like kind of dual storylines. Mickey is also trying to figure out her own origin story. So it's a story about memories, origin, and secrets.
Are we going to see a lot of maturity in her character in terms of her experience as a PI?
Oh, she is just a regular writer.
Okay.
This new character, Mickey.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, she is not a professional in any sense.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she's
All right.
young. This is my first time writing like a significantly younger character. She's 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I have to ask you what nowadays, because I always like to plug other writers. What are you reading these days? What's on your bedside?
Oh,
Now,
God.
well, you've got a book out, so
Yes.
I know that, you're already working on something else, but still there's some downtime here. This is where I really,
There's downtime.
Well, you get a chance to read, right? You get a chance to be able to read. What are you reading these days? What's on your bedside table?
Well, I am actually reading Jess Lowry's next book, Bloodline, that comes out in January.
Okay.
It is wonderful. It's basically, in some ways, Rosemary's Baby in Minnesota in turn of, it's creepy and it's great, and it's available for pre-order right now. So I'm doing that. Right. And I'm a Pitch Wars mentor. So I'm going to be reading lots of possible entries of someone I can mentor for the next 3 months or so.
Nice.
So yeah, downtime. Yeah.
Well, listen, I just finished, and now she's gone. Where is it? Right there, right?
There
okay. And that, Rachel, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just think, I really do. I agree with a lot of what people are saying, is the number of twists and turns. Like I already said, I really appreciate how you took on the idea of going away from the nonlinear approach. I mean, that is, chronological order is what really resonates with people. But I think it's good for us as writers to challenge people in terms of throwing a lot at them. So I think that you did a really great job of that, and I really enjoyed it. And I just read this one. It's called The Lives of Edie Pritchard, which was by a really favorite of mine, Larry Watson. He's a really terrific writer out of my home state, Wisconsin. So I enjoyed reading that. And I don't know what's next for me in terms of reading, but I'll look into it. Now, Mary Elizabeth, I don't have a clock in front of me because I'm on full screen. So how are we doing for time? Because we can keep going, or we can start taking questions from the audience.
You can probably do one more question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And we'll probably start those with a question from Barbara Howe, because she submitted one in advance. So
well, if I've got one more question
to Rachel, and then I'll invite Barbara to ask one of hers.
And I know, Rachel, that it didn't work out, that you got a chance to work with, or to talk with Kent Kruger, but I just to plug an upcoming event, I think, for Men of Mystery and Collecting Clues. Kent Kruger is going to be coming on. It's funny, he went from his very successful Cork O'Connor mystery series, which I think he had like 20 different books, but now he's gone complete. His last 2 books have really been literary fiction. I don't know if you're familiar, Ordinary Grace and The Tender Years, I think is the other title. I hope I didn't get that wrong. Or this Tender Land. Anyway, just terrific. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about venturing on from you and I, we both are really into the procedural, you've written great procedurals with your character, Lieutenant Lou Norton. Have you ever thought about moving on?
My actual very first book was published on September 11th of 2002.
Wow.
Yes. So a year after.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was not necessarily a procedural. It was considered, it was literary fiction / psychological suspense. And I eventually, worked my way to procedurals and this genre. Now, I like this what we are doing for crime and mystery suspense, because one, I like structure, and it allows me to keep that structure. It allows me to explore social issues that really mean something to me, all in this nice, entertaining way. So I'm here forever. I'd like to write something, like if I had a dream of doing something, I'd like to write something like a John Krakauer type book, where it's it reads like fiction, but it's all true. And I have no idea how I do that. So I'm here for the long haul.
Well, I tell you what, let's keep writing I think, like I said, we're both so fortunate to be involved with such a great publisher. Yeah. And it's been great to meet you over these last several years. And this is the best we can do right now. But I hope that before too long, let's do an event together. Wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
Tell Mary Elizabeth, put us in the same room. We'd have a lot of fun. That'd be great.
Yes, as I hear a lot on Zoom now. Let's put a pin in that.
Absolutely. We will
That'd be
make
great.
that a goal to get you in a room
Yeah.
together, hopefully
Yeah.
with some of the lovely people joining us tonight. So Barbara has asked in chat, and I'll also say if other people have questions for Rachel and Neal, you can put them in chat or you can send them to me. I'm sort of facilitating that as the moderator. So Barbara's question is about They All Fall Down, and she says your previous book, They All Fall Down, was reincarnation or reimagination of Agatha Christie. How did you approach that project?
Uh-oh, I broke up. I didn't get the last part of the question.
Oh, sorry. How did you approach the project?
Oh, okay. So I wanted to tell a story about sin. As a child of the church, you know, I grew up with it. I was an English American literature major, so I liked that kind of Canterbury tales and Dante's Infernos of how we personify sin. And before I even saw or read an Agatha Christie novel, I saw my husband when we were first dating, Murder by Death. And I thought that was like an awesome film. And it's like, who is this Agatha Christie? And what is this Dashiell Hammett? And who are all these, you know, this satire? And that's when I started seeking out, you know, those older books. And it wasn't until I saw Seven, and it's like, oh my God, this is what I want to do, that I started trying to write the story. But back then, when Seven came out, I did not know how to write it. And then it took me some time to figure that out. And I did that throughout, you know, my 30s when I'm trying to publish, but not getting anywhere. It took me writing a few Lou Nortons to learn the language of, you know, suspense and everything to figure that out. And then when it did, that's when I read, and now, and then there were none. And I figured out how I wanted to do it. I wanted to tell it from a first person perspective of an African American woman, which, you know, is not the Christie way. But there are some changes to it, of course. It's a very American retelling of the story. But yeah, I look to pop culture a lot in terms of structure and personifications. You know, each sin is a very modern take of that sin. Black widows and racism and police brutality, they're all in there. So it was fun writing that. Thank you, Barbara.
All right, and D.L. White would like you to reiterate the title that you're recommending that's a January release.
Bloodlines by Jess, Jess, Lowry, Lourey. It is kick-ass. I love it. It really is creepy. And if she has, her previous one is Unspeakable Acts, and you can get that through Creating Conversations too, I believe.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tanya Adams is asking, how do you plot your red herrings, especially for something as twisty as the recent book?
Yes. And that's actually really, that's like my weakness, because I think everything makes me hold my breath. So I go through, I get 8.5 by 14 paper, and I plot out my entire story by chapter on this long, I just tape all these legal size paper. And then I will actually have, you know, it's right there all on this long scroll of paper. And that's where it's like, okay, something needs to happen here. Something needs to happen there. Something needs to happen there. So it's very manual how I do the pacing. I need to look at it and I need to write it out. And, you know, I also use the traditional 3-act, 8-act structure for mysteries that, you know, everyone uses, but I actually write it down on long pieces of paper. It's like a scroll. And that's how I can visually see, oh, I need something here. I need something there. So yes, I'm very manual. Everything's done the old fashioned way for me.
So a cup of tea is potentially your nemesis. I spill that and you're in trouble.
Woo, or a cat, or yeah, it's happened actually. Coffee stains and chicken grease.
Another question from Barbara, who is like to know, when did you know you wanted to be a writer, and why did you choose this kind of book? crime fiction, police procedural area. And
Um,
actually, maybe have both of you answer.
yeah, because I'm sure Neil, especially coming from your area, is a different thing. But for me, I've kind of always wanted in some way to be a writer. I just didn't know that I could because I didn't see anyone who looked like me doing it. I grew up in a very interesting, rough part of town. And so there was gang activity and there was a lot of police activity. I grew up with police helicopter lights shining in my bedroom window. So I was always fascinated with it. I didn't understand it. It scared me and it fascinated me. And so that's what I kind of wanted to write about, my fears. Writing was my way of expressing how scared I was of things. I wasn't much of a talker as a kid. So in some ways I wanted to always do it. And it took me until after college, when I started working at Penn Center USA West, which is a part of Penn American Center, that I saw working African-American writers. That's where I met Gary Phillips and Jervy Turvalon and Paula Woods. And I saw that they were like me and they actually wrote the stuff and they wrote crime and mystery. And crime and mystery is the perfect way of me figuring out those things that scared me. And those things that scared me was what we do to each other, how we hurt each other, sometimes fatally. So yeah, Neal, what about you?
Well, obviously completely different experience growing up in a small town of Wisconsin, looking like I look, and and everybody else looking like I look. So but I was fortunate that I grew up in a world of books. My dad was a college professor and always had our nose buried in a book to challenge what we thought we already knew. So I think once I became a cop, and I became a cop right around the time of the Rodney King incident, which a lot of people now go, who's Rodney King? Believe it or not, people say that. But I kind of just started to decide, being a big crime fiction fan, that I'd like to try and write police procedurals and crime fiction that would really challenge what people thought they knew about law enforcement, what they thought they knew about policing. So I tried to stay along those same lines. And I think, I'd like to think that each book I've written, I've drilled down on that more to try and really get people to reconsider what it is they think they're so sure of. And it's just interesting right now in this particular time where the legitimacy of police is really being challenged. And that's an argument that I'm willing to get involved in on another occasion. I think that is a good argument to have, is this police department that we've built in this city really the best we can do to respond to people's needs? So yeah, I like challenging people's ideas and assumptions. And I recently wrote a book from the point of view of an 18-year-old Latino and a 40-year-old white cop. So I think I pulled those two things together, and I hope that people ask themselves some questions about, is this really the best we can do? So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah.
So a question that came in just to me in chat actually ties very directly to this, which is, there probably is no such thing as a book that doesn't have a political point of view, right? I mean, someone who says, oh, I don't have politics in my book is really saying, I'm in a position of privilege under current circumstances where I don't have to acknowledge it. Do you want to respond to that?
I agree, because especially with crime, how can you not have a point of view? Either I can't even imagine. I'm trying to think of something you can write, especially in crime, mystery, and suspense, where no one has an opinion about anything. I would never want to read that book. Even the light, fluffy ones with the cupcake recipes, you have a point of view on something, and therefore you're taking, by you not being political, that's a political answer. So some of us are just more vocal about it and more overt with it, but everyone has an opinion, even if your opinion is not to have an opinion.
Well, it's funny. I think whether you can talk about Richard Wright, Native Son, you can talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, you can talk about New Centurions. And it's funny to me that all of these stories are considered to be great works of American literature, and all of them in essence are crime stories. And they're
Yes.
stories that are challenging the system that we call criminal justice.
Mhm.
And I really think it's probably something that a really significant part of the population take for granted,
Yeah.
and another significant portion of the population say, it's never been there for me.
Yeah.
And I just think to look at it from all the perspectives we can, and whether you can call it politics, you can call it social commentary, but to drill down on what it is that people, how people experience equality and justice in our American system, I think it's noble work. And I just, I love what Rachel's doing with it from the perspective of an African American woman who writes from that position, that point of view,
Mhm.
or from my perspective as a old retired white guy who says, this is how I approach policing, and I didn't get it all right. My perspective sometimes was out of touch with my community. So I think coming at it like that and entertaining people and making it a page turner that people can just really sink their teeth into and say, wow, I gotta rethink my point of view here. I think that's time well spent.
All right, so not to give everybody a little bit of whiplash, but we're going to move away from discussing sort of the world that your works exist in to a little bit of a focus on craft. Jan had a question.
Yes, Rachel, I was asking, how many words do you usually, like your first draft that you send to your editor, how many words is that? Like 1,000, and then they par it down to 500, or pardon me, pages.
Yes.
How does that work? And I know it's got to be painful.
Oh, well, probably for Kristen, my editor, more than me. I tend to write long. When I send my draft to her, it's usually around 101,000 words. Then we get it down to 90. I always try and go for like between 85, 90,000 words. And, a lot of that is fluff. A lot of that are those words, your crutch words, or when you're being just kind of too repetitive. But every word that I put in there, I want them there. They're there for a reason. And sometimes, I have to cut. But as we all know, those of us who are writers, nothing's ever tossed away for good. And Now She's Gone was actually came out of that book I had been trying to write after my very first book. And I, again, didn't know how to write it, but I kept it. And so I used part of that story to help shape And Now She's Gone. So nothing's ever trash. And so I overwrite and then I pare it back. So yeah.
What did you come at? What's your word count on And Now She's Gone?
It's 90,000.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's 90,000. It's probably nice. 89,995 or something like that.
That's a nice tight book. That's where I usually come in around 90 to 94. And and I'm with you. Every word that gets cut is like it's a painful process. But then again, when you wind up with that nice tight story that people can just really sink their teeth into.
Yeah. And I think, folks are, it's a big book, but I think it reads quickly. I need all that stuff in there to tell the story of Grayson and Isabel and this woman named Natalie Dixon. So
yeah.
So I have a semi-random quick question for you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Is that York behind you?
York?
The figure, the doll
right
or whatever?
Oh, that is Lou Norton. So a wonderful book club made this doll for me, and she's wearing a suit and she has her bag because Lou carries her nice bag, and she has a small copy of Skies of Ash. And so yes, she made that for me, Lou Norton, right there.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It is really wonderful. I loved it. I was shocked. Yeah. So.
All right. And another question from Barbara. She says, you're both accomplished authors who've done many in-person events before COVID. As a storyteller, please share with us your funniest, most embarrassing, or most horrible book signing event. And you may choose not to respond to this if you prefer. I don't know if you feel like telling tales on yourselves or not.
Go ahead, Rachel.
I am trying to think of one. There are always the events where only a few people come. Oh, there was one in Oakland, my very first one for Land of Shadows, and I was at this small bookstore in Oakland, and only one person showed up that wasn't a family member, and there were only two of my family members, so there was three of us. And I sat down and talked to this one person, and it was embarrassing. It was a great conversation, but this wasn't what I had pictured. When you publish your first book, you have these great dreams of overflowing crowds. I remember coming actually down to Mysterious Galaxy, and there are more people than this bookstore in Oakland, but there weren't a lot. And the person working at Mysterious Galaxy told me, Karen Slaughter came and no one showed up.
Wow.
And Joseph Lambaugh came and no one showed up. And it's like, oh, okay, I have more people than Karen Slaughter and Joseph Lambaugh. So yay me. So yeah.
Sometimes it happens, and we call those intimate events. If you want to know the vernacular, it was an intimate event.
Very intimate.
Don Winslow tells a great story of no one showing up, no one showing up, and then the owner of the bookstore giving him the keys and asking him, "Well, you can stick around if you want, but lock up when you leave."
Oh.
I had one where it was actually a pretty good event. It was local, so I had a nice crowd. But there was an actual line of people that wanted me to sign their books, which is always very gratifying. But there was a woman in the line, and I shouldn't be cavalier about this, but she was just giving me the stink eye for the longest time. And eventually, she gets up there, and of course, they have a little piece of paper in there where they tell you what the name they want you to sign is, and it said, and she's a woman, and she said, and it said for Kevin. And I said, "Oh, is that is that your husband?" "No, it's my son." Anyway, it turned out to be somebody that I used to work with in the police department who had gotten fired. I had been involved in his firing, and he just wanted me to know that his life was not going well, and
that's
she
scary.
signed his book. So yeah, it was very strange. And I said, "Well, I hope he's doing well," because it just turned out that he wasn't suitable for police work, so he moved on to another career. And I signed it, "Best of luck." Yeah. So that was kind of odd.
Yeah, that's odd. See, because now I'm picturing, of course, as a crime writer, I'm like, she reaches into her bag and goes pop,
she didn't
pop,
do
pop.
that. No, she didn't do that. But she sure gave me the mother stink eye, though. I tell you what.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Wow.
So as you're working on editing your books, and as you're looking at working to your next book, those are not the worlds we are living in right now. So what is the process of dealing with, people gathering in a bookstore, or people gathering at a bar or whatever, when you're sitting in your living room? How does that affect your process?
We've been pretty been at home. When they started opening up for outside dining, that's the one thing we do. We go out and we sit and eat, and then we come back home. And for me, writing in the time of COVID has been a little bit exhausting. I work for a major medical center, and I write for them. And from May 13th, it was the weekend of Left Coast Crime, where it was canceled that Friday, and we drove straight to work at Cedars-Sinai. And from then on, I was writing crisis communications and fundraising materials for COVID-19 forever. And it took away a lot of my energy, my desire to get up early in the morning, because I was just slammed. Up until this point, I had been very successful in separating my work life from my novel writing life. And now they converge, because my dining room table and my coffee table are covered with things of my day job, and using my pens for my day job and my computer for my day job. And it felt very intrusive. And it was difficult. Just now, maybe like 3 months ago, I'm now kind of back into the swing of things, but I've noticed that I spent a lot of my writing time in the car, just thinking about writing. You know, you guys, you know, the commute is a great time to just kind of zone out. And now that I'm not commuting, I miss that kind of crunching ideas and working things out. And it wasn't until I had to drive to Santa Monica for car service that my brain started working again. It was jazz and it was figuring things out because I had that liminal space to do that. And now I don't have that. And so it's weird looking for those snatches of time to just think. And that's gone now. Neal, has it
Well,
changed?
you know, one of my cardinal rules as a writer is to protect your writing time.
Mhm.
That you have to have a period of your day where you go to work.
Yeah.
And, you know, and no offense to wives and husbands of writers or families, but they don't see it that way. They don't see it as a job. They see it as this whatever hobby that you do. But writing, you really do have to approach it like a job. So my job was always to get up in the morning, get the kids off to school. My wife would go to her work at the college campus, and then I would be here to do my job. Well, now we're all sharing the space together. My kid goes to school in the next office over, and he likes to come in every once in a while and see how I'm doing. And of course, my wife is right across the hall doing her job. So now we're sharing all this office space. Okay. So I really had to do my best to protect my writing time, to say this is, you know, and as Rachel, I'm sure can attest to, you know, writing is a very solitary, I'm writing a book right now that's based in 1970. So for all intents and purposes, I'm living in 1970. Mm-hmm. And I'm creating these characters who are very close to me and they're friends of mine, like Eloise is to Rachel and Gray. These are people that we spend a lot of time with. Yeah. And, you know, the interruptions are difficult. So I think just the fact that my private office, my house, has been turned into basically, it's a college campus for a dean. It's a math class for a sophomore who doesn't do well in math and wants a lot of help. And then it's me. And then of course, every once in a while the dog sticks his nose in here. So yes, COVID's interesting. I can't find a positive side to it other than the fact that I enjoy spending. I mean, it's been great for family. We're hunkered down and we're going to get through it. But I can honestly say we've gotten closer as a family, and that part's good. But it's been a challenge as a writer to just say, hey, this is what I do, and it requires that you leave me the hell alone. You just need to let me do this and go there and be in this space for 4 hours at a time uninterrupted. And you know, that part has been a little bit of a challenge.
I was going to say, I am so happy that we liked each other, my little family, because we're doing, especially in the early days, we're doing what we were always doing. We always played board games. We always played video games together. We were always together. And with the pandemic starting, it was more of that. It was also more of appreciating our health and our blessings. And it felt weird, me working, you know, a day job and just how much it drained me. But I had that guilt that at least I have a job, you know? Mm-hmm. So my family were all healthy. No one in my immediate family has been touched by the pandemic directly. Mm-hmm. They could have, but we're all fine. And so it's one of those, if you're looking for the silver lining, it's that kind of self-reflection and counting your blessings. And as writers, everything is content, right? Everything is up for grabs. And it's going to be interesting in 2 years when all the books come out, how this is manifest in our stories, because it has to. I mean,
Rachel, have you gotten to write anything about the pandemic? Have you gotten to?
In Toxic Things, Toxic Things, my epilogue references what's going on.
Yeah, because I got an opportunity to participate in an anthology of just and it's called it's out of the University of Wisconsin, but it's called Hope is the Thing, and it's all about finding hope in the pandemic, and I had an opportunity to contribute to that, and that was a real catharsis. Yeah, so that felt good.
Yeah.
All right, so we're approaching the top of the hour, so we're gonna ask One last question. I know, Neal, it's probably not pertinent to the work that you're doing right now, but Cindy had a question for y'all, and then she will help us wrap up.
Oh.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was curious, do either of you think that you'll write about COVID after the fact?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially since, one, there's been an increased uptick of crime. The whole domestic scene is crazy right now because kids are trapped, women are trapped, everyone's trapped together in, it's a closed door mystery, this pandemic. And we write things that reflect real life. And so I think we are, we're supposed to somehow find a way to reflect what's happening now in what we write. I think we have to.
Yeah, I think that COVID probably will. I'm not sure that I'm going to be the one to do it. Maybe Rachel's ready to step up, but it's going to have to be recorded in the genre of crime fiction. I mean, it's been too impactful. It's been too significant in our world that, and it'll be across the. It'll be interesting to see, as Rachel said. It'll be interesting to see in the next year the literary works that come out, the works that are specific, that women's literature, and the works that are specific to crime fiction about how COVID impacted all of us.
Yeah.
But yes, I definitely think that that's going to be something that's recorded in American literature, and appropriately so. It's been, this has been as significant, certainly as a health issue, but I mean as significant as social issues we've had in our modern history. So it needs to be recorded.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just had this sudden flash on like an updated COVID version of A Rose for Emily.
Yes. Well, thank you, Rachel and Neal, and everyone that's joined us. This has been wonderful. Please be sure to check. Yes.
Yeah, don't forget to, if you want a personalized copy from either me or Neal, please let us know. They'll give you the link somewhere down there, and I will sign it for you when I go in on Monday.
Right. And I was going to say, Rachel will be at Creating Conversations on Monday, so get your orders in by noon if you want to, or go by at 1 and you can see her in person. And as Mary Elizabeth said, they do have copies of Neal's books as well. We thank you all for joining us, and please be sure and order books and support Men of Mystery and Creating Conversations. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great seeing you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth.
Thank you.